Okay, thank you very much. I this first match to thank Marcus and Fergie because when I got through the one that had started this country, took over some of my responsibilities for the organization of this conference. And yeah, talk is about response monetizing and monetizing sustainability, not only for the different engines, they're gonna this account. Yeah, so that is my pleasure that you guys here and I have the opportunity of representing this one in our talking. I'm really critical against his doing this talk. But I should make it look like it's super clear that I have learned a lot from his work on voluntarism. But I have some concerns and questions I'm going to try to ask in this talk. I have used this thinking, history of Europe by Angela once. I think it's a situation of philosopher, but I think one of his knowledge, she has a kind of disability, but at the same time she's active and tries to do something. And we philosophers are the same position according to voluntary epistemology. We are not able to, we don't have that kind of rational force or rational ability to that force us toward choosing a stance, but at the same time, we have this freedom to choose between stances. It seems that kind of having this will and having kind of inability, kind of lack of the force of reason can be found in our work as philosophers in turning to linguist epistemology. Yeah, voluntary epistemology, I think we have discussed that, but just briefly, that the notion of stance is so central. Stance consists in not just oppositional attitudes, but also approaches, commitments, attitudes, and non-propositional attitudes that we look at. And the notion of, the central here is kind of the guidelines that we can have, we can answer, but they can also guide us in taking commitments. The notion of extreme risk is always central here. We understand more risky as they live in the observable entities and causal relations and natural currents and so on and so forth. Anti-realists are more cautious. And the kind of rationality that is assumed in some sort of voluntary system is based on coherence, both logical and pragmatic coherence. Logical in the sense that the belief should be consistent in a stance, and pragmatic coherence in the sense that the commitments that we have or policies that we have should not be in tension with the beliefs that we have. So that some kind of what technologies that we offer is kind of permissive rationality, because the choice between philosophical stances are not dictated with force for epistemic reasons. But at the end, we are free to choose to some extent. And so we have to be to choose between stances, and even in a stance, when we choose a stance, there is a range of limited beliefs, and we can still, even under, after choosing a stance, we have the freedom to constitute our position. And according to Chakravarti, we have three central stances: metaphysical, empiricist, and deflationary stances, and these are the main policies of these stances, for example, the methodological stance, the accepting answer strategy in terms of things and the mind that's available. We attempt to answer these demands by theorizing about the observable. So, repeats. But in the empiricist stance, we reject that demand and then reject the attempts. And the intuitionary stance, we then do not enter into this this is the physical stance, or we interpret or get position differently or the kind of beliefs that they might have in a different way. What would be the state of our debates and our collaborations? This is relevant, I think, rumors. So we still can have debates with each other, but in the case of well-established stances like the equationary stance, the versus stance, and the methodological stance, the simple fact of their unfactoring persistent over centuries of debate should be false. And Chakravarti concludes that it can be extremely difficult to demonstrate that the stance is internally coherent. So what should what can we do in this situation? We can articulate our stances, put our external values on the chamber for examination, and invite others to empathize and encourage the same with respect to others. And this is the main basis of the collaborative epistemology that is at the core of voluntarism epistemology. So as far as I understand, kind of reading that we can do in this context is clarifying, articulating, inviting others to empathy, empathize with us. I think more serious kind of activities is possible that it might be unlikely to be successful. For example, arguments like to show regular consistency in counter examples, or in a case study as a counter example against the possible position might not be successful. So finding inconsistencies either have been discovered or are insignificant and can be fixed easily. Either because there are well-established stances and over centuries of debate that have found important inconsistencies, they have resolved those inconsistencies. And we might find some inconsistencies, but they are not important, they can be fixed easily. And then we this Newtonian account of Einstein indicates kind of Gaussian, or speechless and suspicion of judgment, in the sense that we should suspend our belief or judgment, the superiority of a position over another position, or superiority of more precise superiority of our stance over another stance. And the state of ataraxia or peace of mind is a result of this suspicion of judgment, in the sense that we will have peace of mind, always with the priority in the face of previously present questions and state of tranquility. So this word in the street, the painting that I have used seems to be before the state of ataraxia. So she said, worried in the paper. I think they're after reading the question of the paper, she's in the state of worry. But then after becoming familiar with voluntarism epistemology, they can have these musicians. So happy. And we are in the state of ataraxia. From now on, I focus on CSV or Chakravarti systems voluntarism, and I try to share some of my concerns and ask some questions. So I have two concerns. One of them is about adequacy of this view, and the other one is concern about the usefulness of that. But the main problem that I have is that the relation between actual positions in the debate and the stances, the relations are not so clear to me. So, as far as I'm familiar with the scientific realism debate, we have, philosophical positions. At this level, for example, structural realism, for example, perspectival realism and perspectivism, constructive empiricism, referential realism, causal realism, semi-realism, and many other accounts that are positions, philosophical positions in the debate. And also neo-instrumentalism, cognitive instrumentalism, many other positions, there are a lot, and they are actual positions. We would say they are actual. Yeah. And so there are a lot of them. And we have three stances. So the metaphysical stance, empiricist stance, and evolutionary stance. So something that is not so clear to me. What's the relation between this level, which we would, these are stances? What's the relation between these two? So the first interpretation is stances are certain kinds of positions. So we have many positions, we try to categorize them. When we read metaphysics and metaphysical books and the debate on scientific realism and other debates, for example, philosophy of mind and other parts of philosophy, we see there are different views or accounts, and then we try to categorize them to stances and actual positions. I find that some of them are coherent and some of them, we are sure that some of them are coherent. And about some others, we are not sure. I think this is the wrong interpretation because both Voluntarism and Angel are so clear. The stances are commitment behind positions. So it seems that the stances are somehow idealized positions or commitments behind positions. So, for example, we have structural realism, entity realism here that could be related to metaphysical stance, and then we have, for example, here constructive empiricism and neo-instrumentalism and so on that are more related to history stance and so on. And for example, there's a pragmatism, relativism, stuff like that, it makes sense. In this sense, they are idealized positions, the those stances and other positions in the debate are actualized. But then about the adequacy of that, after reading Angel's book and read Donald Robotom's book, The Instrument of Science, and it's so clear, so explicit that he says that it refers to a complex cluster of related views in an empiricist philosophical tradition. So his view is cognitive instrumentalism, and he claims that it's in the empiricist tradition. But then I found quotations and not explicit statements in his work that seems to be in tension with this empiricist stance. Though he claims that the reason is in the empiricist tradition. So his instrumentalism is compatible with belief in observables such as natural kinds and laws of nature. Furthermore, it's possible for its quotation for an instrumentalist to accept that some theory of verbs are factual inferences, but deny that all of them. So if we come back to just these two policies of the empiricist stance, it seems to me that those claims are in tension with both policies of the empiricist stance, or it doesn't follow the policies completely, but at the end it claims that it's in this tradition. Or another position is entity realism. Entity realism we accept master explanation in terms of things, because entities are used in entity realism to account for empirical evidence. But then we reject attempt to answer this demand for theories. We do not theorize about entities, or we are not realists about theories. It's entity realism. We're just realists about the entities. So at least it's not so clear to me that there is a very simple relation between stances and actual philosophical position, in the sense that we could say structural realism is a case of, for example, metaphysical stance, and entity realism is a case of metaphysical stance. But for example, I don't know, this or that philosophical position is a realization or actualization of the other, for example, basis stance. But apart from these cases, a more general problem or question that I have regarding this relation between stances and positions is that, okay, stances are coherent and trivial because they lack the content to be inconsistent. It's just, for example, in the metaphysical sense, we have just two policies, and it's so clear that they are coherent with each other. But when it comes to positions, so to this level, it's just not policies. We have insights from epistemology, from metaphysics, from the history of science, and many other components that are added. At this level, so I'm not thinking about voluntarism. At this level, it's not anymore clear that we have that kind of coherence. It's not at all, because in each of them, those who have developed them have used many different resources to construct something. It's not at all clear that these philosophical positions are also coherent. And coherence of them is a matter of degree. So we could say that in the case of stances, it's so very clear that all of them are coherent at the same level. But here, we might have different level of strength in inferential connection between different commitment and beliefs and so on and so forth. And the process of finding incoherence is ongoing by advent of new discoveries and new technologies and to advance them in science itself. We could revise our philosophical positions. And so one case that I like, and it's related to our project here, is about entity realism. Ian Hacking is on trials about gravitational lensing, black holes, and other astrophysical objects. But when in 1989, but now after 3 decades of very advancement in astrophysics and cosmology, I think it's hard even for an entity realist to be anti-realist about astrophysical objects. So the process of the process of finding inconsistencies in these actual philosophical positions, and also examining the adequacy is ongoing, and we can go close on the advancement of science. Okay, this was my first concern of the trial. So to wrap up, voluntarism applies to stances, but they are trivial and consistent. But the actual positions that are indeed the center of the debate, for example, in metaphysics, and philosophy, or in other areas of philosophy, it's also clear that they are coherent, and voluntarism here does not, at least it's not clear how voluntarism can also be applied here. Because it's not clear if they are all coherent, and the coherence of them are more similar. So that's one considerable question or problem that I have. And the second one is about usefulness. So here also I should be so clear that I do not mean that voluntary epistemology is not useful. In instance, I try to define usefulness in a specific way and show that in this sense that I try to explain, I am not sure that it could help And indeed, it was an existential concern that I had after reading Anton's work, because I thought that after like 7 or 8 years of working and developing the position in the scientific realism debate, I understood that I could choose so freely from being in one position among many positions. And I didn't have to, make a lot of efforts. So that's the main concern that I'm thinking about. With that. Yeah. What's the point of philosophical work if we could easily choose different philosophical positions?
Can you move that way?
Yes.
If you don't want.
I want to say more about this. That's one concern. Another one. Well, I see many people discussing at this level. There are many people that are still developing different versions of scientific realism. Just in recent years, for example, realism, history of science, resisting scientific realism, as well as many book and many contributions have come out at this level. And I was at this level at that time when I was reading my just book. I think from this standpoint, okay, what kind of use or help or kind of light can you shed on the collective basis that we have in this level? I hope that it's fair to expect this kind of help, because there is no philosophical view here discussing the debate the first order of philosophical debates, and this is at the level using meta philosophy. It's discussing these positions, and it might be a question of how can you be helpful for us to make progress in our debate. And now I try to somehow articulate this concern in more way. So the claim is that CSP is not useful in this very particular sense for philosophical debates. The argument is not tolerance. If CSP is useful, then it should facilitate certain area of activity. I will explain what these activities mean. However, it does not. So it's not useful. So that's the kind of argument. So what do I mean by usefulness here? Usefulness of philosophical accounts. So usefulness is a norm. And norms very, very relevant. It can be applied and should be applied to evaluate an account. But I think here usefulness is even more that can be applied and evaluate in the philosophical account. But if it's relevant, and I think in philosophical debates we can have two conditions for the relevance. So if we have a debate that holds value either practically or intellectually, and progress in the debate is reasonably expected. So this is first order philosophical debate. And this is second order higher level debate. It's meta philosophy. So the point is that not at home, short stands Valentine's zone is the metaphilosophical position, and here the whole debate on the answer, for example, here is a debate on the first order of philosophical debate. And if this debate, so there are two conditions. If this debate holds value, either practically or intellectually, and progress in the debate is reasonably expectable. So this is a good, it's not a waste of time. So it's a good debate that we have, and we can expect some progress in the debate in the future. So usefulness, law of first usefulness will be applied for meta philosophical positions discussing, which are about, debates the first order level. So there might be other views here. For example, I was thinking of this talk, last talk, that perhaps another meta philosophical view here could be localism, for example. It sounds like this could be two meta philosophical positions concerning debate. But the use of this kind of meta philosophy is so clear to me. Now it says that should not focus on the traditional form of arguments between the numerical argument and the pessimistic induction. Okay, so we are here. You say, oh, thank you, that was great. So from now on, we go local and focus on cases and particular parts of science. And so the use of them and the kind of light that it can shed on the debate is so super clear for me. So the question of mine is here, what kind of help or usefulness can Voluntarism have? I hope that I'm not so unfair, but my impression was that it discouraged me from having any kind of philosophical debate because of the sense that I have, because it's voluntarism, we can choose freely. The kind of activities that we can have is just articulation, clarification, or things like that. Not more serious philosophical work on proposing counterexamples or arguments that show incoherence. So in this sense, it's like clear to me that there is any input in this regard, any value or usefulness in this very sense. And on the other hand, this discards contribution. Yeah, and I could facilitating Korea, I think I borrowed this from Hassan Chan, but I use it in a totally different context here. The main, the kind of Korean activities that I have in mind will include, for example, developing arguments, making distinction, dividing thought experiment, proposing counterexample, and kind of, studying cases. So they are sort of activities that we philosophers do. So usefulness is a norm. If it's relevant, so that you make this valuable, practical, intellectual, and progress into the debate is foreseeable in one way or another. And so the norm of usefulness is relevant to our meta-philosophical position. And in this case, and then usefulness means facilitating Korean activities, not impeding. And to wrap up, this is my concern. I hope that helps me to address that this usefulness is a norm and it's relevant in the evaluation of CSV, and CSV was not sufficiently facilitate Korean acquisition in this stage. And that useful starts voluntarism in this sense. As I said in my slides, I do not think that self-voluntarism is completely useless. There are some very important benefits and functions in that. So the main important thing I think is that we clarify non-epistemic factors. Non-epistemic factors we didn't know before self-voluntarism, and the whole discussion on stances that non-epistemic factors are important. There are some kind of policies that and so on and so forth, and they are important. And it adjusts our expectations about hospital debates. And I would like to thank Sandy to inform me about that, and Anjan himself. That it's also so important. So we should adjust our expectations in philosophical works. We should not expect that we can convince others and we can propose the final position with like that. So these are the main functions and values of that they are great. But in the sense that I use usefulness, I'm thinking about perhaps a version of voluntarism or voluntarist epistemology that it's without this kind of cynicism and skepticism or this sense of aphasia, and as it encourages for you that this is not way. There are some accounts in the research I said, how for example, my synchronicity, for these groups, sports of philosopher, and so I think that this literature goes to that direction. You have to be more useful, but you know the kind of account that I see here in terms of sounds pluralism. It seems to me that these accounts that one of those aspect is or that you know aphasia and the kind of skepticism behind the CSP are not that important or they not play with. Thank you.